Laureate Emeritus of Sacramento, Indigo Moor's fourth book of poetry, Everybody's Jonesing for Something, took second place in the University of Nebraska Press's Backwater Prize. His second book, Through the Stonecutter's Window, won Northwestern University Press's Canem Prize. His first and third books, Taproot and In the Room of Thirsts and Hungers, were both part of Main Street Rag's Editor's Select Poetry Series. Indigo is an adjunct professor at Dominican University and visiting faculty for Dominican's MFA program, teaching poetry and short fiction. He is also a former faculty member at the Stonecoast MFA program, where he graduated in 2012 with an MFA in poetry, fiction, and script writing. Three of Indigo's short plays, Harvest, Shuffling, and the Red and Yellow Quartet, debuted at the 60 million plus theater Spring Playwrights Festival. His full-length stage play, Live at the Excelsior, was a finalist for the Images Theater Playwright Award, and the subsequent screenplay has been optioned for a full-length film. Indigo is the former poetry editor for Bookends Review Literary Journal and sits on the advisory boards for the Sacramento Poetry Center and the Modesto Stanislaus Poetry Center. He is a Canem Fellow, former resident artist at 916 Inc., and a graduate member of the Artists Residency Institute for Teaching Artists. A 10-year veteran of the U.S. Navy and a twice decorated Gulf War veteran, Indigo divides his time between writing, teaching, and integrated circuit layout designing for computer companies. Please welcome our guest, Indigo Moor.
Thank you, Sandra. It's wonderful to be here. And it is wonderful to read with William. You know, I was trying to remember if we'd ever actually read together, and I realized we haven't. So this was wonderful to finally hear you and to be hearing you and knowing that now I have to bring it to the same level that you did. So thanks for that. I've been working on my memoir, and I was speaking with some students the other day, and we were talking about how writing about yourself is not really writing about yourself, it's communication, because you're trying to communicate an idea of yourself and keep it in the context of what you're trying to communicate to them, which has absolutely nothing to do with the first poem, which is, it's an ekphrastic poem, and it's Veiled Vision, acrylic by Katie Kalk of Claude Monet. And there is someone in the audience who should recognize this poem. Anchored, as his tired bones insisted, to the chair, sunken into a cashmere coat with thick raised collar. You had no choice but to swirl his weight onto the wicker armrest. You give us Monet, subtracted by everything he no longer is. Cataracts stacking behind shades, shrunken skull plastered beneath the brim of a gaudy sun hat. No wonder he succumbed to this pose. Camille, Alice, and Jean are dead, fading as his days and his eyesight. Gently he rocks the cottage before him, the bridge after, off the focus of the canvas. I can almost see you, empirically calling brilliant strokes and heroic lights to take arms against the dying of Claude's seasons. Yet, not even your signature, resembling a Roman numeral 9, can resurrect feline likeness into his body. Of the futility he must sense in you, the bemused tilt of his head says all we need to know. Beneath the light-soaked beard, our lips pressed to keep the secret you are desperate to protect us from. A day will come for each of us when we are nothing more than still life in someone else's eyes. I'm going to read from my last book, Everybody's Jonesing for Something, because it needs to sell. It's doing well, but anyone who wants to buy it, I'll be happy to sign it. And the book, well, actually, this is from my third book, which has a totally different title. And someone's going to help me with that because I'm old and forgetting these things. In the Room of Thirsts and Hungers. And in this poem, you see Paul Robeson, one of our greatest Americans, speaking to who I believe, not really, but who I believe is his cousin, Othello. And we hear Paul Robeson being able to confess to something that he never has before. Forgive me, Othello. Bemused by an octave deeper than any grave, sweeter than breadfruit and molasses, I lost my mind. Yolanda, she rode in from Calcutta, trailing turbaned servants, a taste for all things me. I wrestled, entrenched with demons from Spain to Russia, America to Italy. But when I couldn't box this devil back into its corner, I gave in to every succulent kiss, covered my wife's picture, and took off my ring. When you've thrown back enough cocktails, Yolanda rhymes with all the heartache you can sweep under a rug and not go crazy. No pry bar known to man can break her grip. I'd lose a good leg gaining freedom. She sucker punched me and married a Russian prince. When a peacock folds her kaleidoscope, the rainbow still haunts your gaze. The roundabout dumped me back in Jersey. My wife won't stop crooning my sins. Othello, she wasn't the first, and she won't be the last. I wake starved for my reflection in every woman's eyes. I've been writing quite a bit about women's rights lately, and it feels like such a dishonor to call it women's rights because it should be the rights of all people. But when I look at Desdemona from Othello, I think that we often don't look at her with the strength that she could have had. She gave up being a noble in her father's house to fall for this man who she could never truly have a life with. At least I feel she could never have a life with. But she said, if you read the text carefully enough, you see she kind of stalked him, hearing the tales that he told. Home is the first prison. Her father unleashes dogs only to hunt. By firelight, he ordered her father's left. Desdemona tracks Othello, the aged stag, cross dinner, cross war, slavery, and sweet escape. Nothing could save him from her teeth. Venetian families survive on sons' names. Her worth measured only in the ripeness of her womb. Stone to stone, she traced and retraced rooms like a bad memory, dragging a dowry promise like a gallows. Othello is a handsome man, sugared on truth and pain, sweetened on man's lust for dignity. But no victory will lighten his skin or change her gender. Some answers devour everything they touch, crave demolition. To escape the prison of good intentions, you have to burn the gates behind you. Desdemona took a hammer to Venetian trust, cursed bigotry and faith, mounted this Barbary horse, and left the castle walls. It's simple. The key to her cell flourished in the father's chest. Othello and Desdemona fell in love and clawed it out. All right, I want to read the first poem that ever made it into a manuscript for me, and it's called Back Through the Storm Door. And you would think it would be right here, and there it is. And there's a reason I'm reading this. Maybe you'll catch on by the time I get to the end of this reading. Back through the storm door. I left the South broken, a busted wing and a crooked eye. Still, I wake mornings with the taste of honeysuckle on my tongue. The phone rings, voices weary with traveling, wires weighed down with crows and thick heat. I know it's the South calling me to christen the born or bury the dead. Lord, I'm still addicted to its touch. He doesn't have long. If you're going to come, it better be soon. In bed hours later, my mind still tallied to the phone's bad news. Weed, codeine, scotch. I've ingested enough fog and brain ash to black out the moon. But the crucible of the past is relentless, grinding behind eyelids. Memories spark wild along the nerve's telegraph. The lens focuses backwards, and the mind grays decades. I dream my past, a fragmented play, spliced together with rawhide ties and silk thread. It grows claws and jumps the stage, a beast my hands don't know how to tame. There is no balm for the past dull ache. When the blue jay rolls up his song, the whole damn world spins down on me. Falling back through the door, I'm broken again. I'm going to move on to a poem entitled What I Know. My doctor says if I lost some weight, my sleep apnea would go away, vanish like a fog bank banished by the sun. That my migraines would fold into themselves, implode like black holes, dissipate like a breaststroke of yellow slathered with white. I know. But I show her a Polaroid, bronze glazed by 3 decades, 3 whip-thin boys framing authentic Southern furniture, my grandmother's living room. That one, I say, the miniature scarecrow, arms folded, already leaning away from spotlights, that's me. When I was 9, I would pace the dark bathroom, the tender spaces behind my eyes filled with a hideous pounding. My hands pressed against my face, a jellied miasma snaking through my skull, trying to push my brains through the sockets. Some demons take decades to name themselves, own up to their clawing work. He's got a headache. Voices from the other side of the door, where light pistoned through the air, squeeze the edges, the creases, trying to get to me through cracks to finish off the mewling, beastling thing. I remember once my mother opening the door, slipping in 2 aspirins and closing it again. Sending an aspirin to battle a migraine is like standing a dogwood leaf on a beach to stop a tsunami. I never made the connection of the sleepless nights, my brother throwing a pillow at me to turn over, once putting it over my face. I don't know what's wrong with you, boy. Somehow, not finishing that statement, leaving it to hang in the air of those Carolina nights that seemed both staggeringly and casually warm, saddened me. Because maybe that statement was finished, needed no resolution. I would curl up on my side and pray to never sleep again. I know my doctor is right. My waist size is a multiple of that greyhound child's who, while never the fastest, could run for days on an ounce of water, a single breath. I know the fat moth around my neck strangles my breathing like two butchered meat hands. Can't be good for me. But also know that year was my first year of football, my first year of the NASCAR hat wearing white coach who asked me if I knew what you called a nigger who had been shot, stabbed, strangled, put in a sack, and thrown in a river. Answer, the damnedest case of suicide you'd ever seen. That's a cigar-smoking man who played offensive line, excuse me, that cigar-smoking father of the boy who played offensive line next to me saw nothing wrong with these jokes, nothing wrong with the twisting psyche of stringy, fatherless little black boys, and how the most painful thing he could say to me was, I'm proud of you, battering me with a painful lump of unwanted pride. What he left me was a hatred of me and of him, knowing I had no words and no breath to use them. This was the moment I learned to let pain roost on my neck, that I became a tree rooted in the ground, soft with storm water, my body seconds from pitching over. This was the season my walk took on a timid hitch. These were not the years of Black parents battling demons or the demon world to save their children. My family battled the nearness of what could go wrong, the next worst thing sidling up to them. If I had opened up to my mother, all she could have given me was a couple of small words of hope and closed the door. I know I need to shed a few pounds, loosen the withering grip on my neck. But I also know not all weight, not everything that strangles you can be measured in pounds. All right, so I've got time for, oh yes, I do want to read from the book. It would be nice to, yes, try to read. I do want to read a poem, short story actually. It's a flash fiction piece. It is short, called Blackberries, and then one poem after this. Blackberries. Side by side, we walked this last dirt road together. It's a star-catcher moon, my brother said. See how it's shaped like an upside-down sickle, like a cupped hand? See what I mean? He was pointing with his left hand because his right arm was broken, thudding against his side like a screen door in a breeze. His left hand wasn't much better. Bloody, the fingers swollen, but at least it worked. He held the hand up to the sky, cupped it beneath the moon. See, you could drop a star right into it. He was home from Yale for all of 3 days, but you wouldn't know it from the way he looked. There was no Ivy League in that swollen jaw or black eye. Ivy League students didn't hang out on unlit, shit-kicking dust roads with fucked up little brothers like me. My vision swam sideways and then rushed back, slamming against my eyes, wobbling them in their sockets. My right knee lost focus and buckled under the clouding sky. He was having trouble keeping up with me. His breath wheezed like a tractor that had pulled one too many plows, as if one lung wasn't working so good. Still, he wouldn't shut up. That star above the moon, I know it looks like it's standing still, but it's falling. Almost too slow to see, but it's falling, I tell you. If you watch it long enough, you'll see it drop right into the moon. At 12, squeezed into the tire swing in the backyard while he sat on the porch telling me stories, I might have believed this crap. But that boy was gone, buried beneath 5 summers of drought and withered wheat harvest. It's Mars, I said. I was guessing. I couldn't look up to check. My neck was full of ground glass, my stargazing days over for a little while, maybe longer. We were on the downside of a grade. The road rose to a steep crest behind us. There were no headlights coming over the hill, at least, not yet. We shuffled along while the crickets mocked us from the blackberry bushes. I thought I heard a truck 3 times before it was real. A diesel engine building up its chops. I spun all the way around and faced the hill, hoping my brother would keep walking. Prayed he would. He turned around and stood beside me. Headlights climbed the backside of the hill like a forest fire. I don't need you to fight my battles for me, I said. I know. I didn't even ask you to come back. He put his hand on my shoulders. I shrugged it off. The truck straddled the top of the hill like a rabid animal, crazed eyes tunneling through me through the dark. It paused, sighted us, then leapt into its charge. Sirens went off inside my head. We moved like the brothers time and distance had made us, diving to opposite sides of the road. Thorns tore at me like every thought I'd had of him since he left me to rot on the farm. The pickup spun dirt, then roared to a stop. Boots hit the ground. I stumbled through the briar for hours or minutes, moonlight tracking me like a hellhound. I fell into a clearing where a farmhouse squatted, dressed up in faded reds, peeling whites. I got to my knees and took off for the safety of the welcome mat. I hoped it was on the porch. It was close, tantalizingly close. The breath on my neck told me I would never make it. I'm going to finish with one poem. It's entitled Lost in a World Machine. There was a theme to what I was reading tonight. And hearing some of William's poems sort of destroyed it because he was reading some of the things, some of the types of things that I wanted to read, and no way was I going to compare myself to that. So William, thank you for the reading. Sandra, thank you for inviting me. And I'm going to end with Lost in a World Machine. And this is another one of those poems where you're speaking of yourself, but you're really speaking of how lost you were in your own skin. Lost in a world machine. I'm 17 and black, nimble as Jack, jumping I-beams like candles. An air hose hisses like Medusa's head tied to my wrist. This refining machine performs the alchemy to turn rusted steel virginal again, but it's stinging me to death. Gray hot pellets jet from tiny holes, black-striped horseflies, cutting away the oxidation. Like the foreman's gaze, they always find the tender flesh. I'm summer college fodder, working shit jobs before humping a train back to Raleigh, North Carolina. The welder's first sparks of the day always make me flinch. Dust-laden smoke circles the rafters, ropey chains hanging like man-o'-war tendrils, like a trembling curtain of almost lynchings. I'm a harlequin, playing cards with someone else's deck. I know as much about refining steel as I do about studying textbooks. I'm hard-tracked to do both or neither, until pressure guises out my brain, until I roll snake eyes with the future. Maybe if I threw myself into this machine, I could save my feet this tortured road. Crosstown bus passes dig deep into minimum wage. An old lady shuffles after my bus as it pulls from the curb. I didn't reach the pull cord in time to give her a fighting chance. Or, like my absentee father might say, maybe I just didn't try enough. Thank you everyone for coming here. This was absolutely wonderful.